Here we go. So I think this is all working okay. It seems to be. Oh, something's just popped up on my screen. There we go. So welcome, Sara Moore, to the BTS Creative Academy podcast. We're streaming live over Riverside. I believe this is streaming up to YouTube. We'll find out later if that works. Yeah, if not, this will go out with the normal podcast. Welcome, Sara. You're an artist, mum, Cyber Threat Intelligence Analyst as well. So I believe there's lots to discover with you. So how are you this morning, Sarah?
Yeah, I'm good. It's cold. I don't know. It's nearly Christmas. That makes me happy.
Good. Yes.
Yeah, I'm good. Thank you. How are you?
I'm also cold, so I do my podcast from my shed.
Oh.
So I've just had the heater on, and it is insulated in here, so hopefully we'll be okay. But if I start turning blue, it's because I'm in my shed.
Okay, that's great.
So tell me a bit about what you're looking forward to this Christmas.
Well, I guess it's just family, like everyone else, settling up. To be honest, I am on a bit of wind down. I think this year's been quite busy for me. So Christmas is about family, it's about eating, it's about hibernation, and just going for walks and food, really, I guess. So I'm looking forward to all of that wind down. I think I'm already in that mode, and quite a lot of people I speak to are like, I think everyone's pretty exhausted and pretty happy it's the end of the year.
Yeah, it is nice to have like that moment, isn't it, that we can kind of like feel like we're coming to an end with things, and we can maybe go on pause for a little while.
Yeah.
Is there anything wrong with that?
I don't think so. No, I think I'm definitely one of those people that likes to go. Like I'm quite uncomfortable with sitting still. And I think probably if you've looked through my work, especially when there's a lot going on in the world and I feel like a bit guilty, I often feel like guilty if I'm enjoying my time or if I'm relaxing. But actually, because I'm a mum, it forces me to prioritise rest periods, which is quite healthy actually. So that's why prioritising my own health, my children, making sure I have downtime, restocking my energy so that I can go again it's become something that's more familiar as I've got older and become a parent.
It sometimes doesn't feel natural when you're trying to do the work, and you feel like there's so much you want to achieve. There's so much you want to say with your work and do. To take that pause can be quite difficult. But it sounds to me like that you've recognise that, and motherhood has that had something to do with that recognising it, being a mum, being forced to not just look after yourself, but do you just have the one child?
I have between me and my partner we have 4 girls.
Wow.
Yeah. So I do try and take stock of who I am and how I approach these challenges, because I want to make sure that I'm obviously being the best role model for my girls. And that a lot of that means not bringing work home, however hard that is, because I work from home quite a lot, so I have to be able to be my best self with my girls. So I try and take the responsibility that I feel off my shoulders a bit and make it about that, which often includes having fun. Like I have to have fun, they have to be happy. They need playtime, and they need they need me to be myself, my authentic self as a mum with them. So I think becoming a parent has probably been one. I know everyone sort of says this, but it's probably one of the best things I've ever done, because it's really forced a lot of self-reckoning with how I approach things. Maybe before I would have been a bit more allowed myself to be a bit more self-sabotaging, maybe. I think maybe that's like an autistic default. But as a mum, you can't do that. You can't allow yourself to dwell too long, and you have to sort of take yourself out of that to be there, like at 3 a.m. in the morning, with someone, if one of them doesn't sleep, you've got to be kind and empathetic and caring with your own children and not out of energy. So yeah, it's becoming a mum has made me settle down in so many ways.
There's a having a priority, something that's more important than just yourself, is so important, isn't it? Not just for your work, but for you as a human being.
Yeah.
I have children myself, and it took me a long time to realise that I was doing so much for them. Often, you often forget that you need to be your best self to do those things. So you can be putting your energy and time into your children, but if you haven't got yourself in the right frame of mind, it often doesn't work, does it?
Yeah, that includes a lot of things. Making sure you've eaten, making sure that you do take time for sleep if you can. When you've got babies, it's hard, but trying to take offers for help seriously, like, okay, yes, I do need help. Let me have a nap, and then and then being more boundary setting with your own work, I think, is a challenge, especially if you're ambitious. And I'm definitely one of those people that is, I don't know whether you'd call it like susceptible to feeling valued if only you produce something. I think that's probably the artist in me as well. It's just like, ta-da, here's the end product. This means I've done something good. But then, when you become a parent again, you can't achieve as much. You just can't. So you have to find other ways of the value in yourself and the value in your life outside of what you have made with your hands, or what you've produced.
Mm-hmm. So how do you find that value then? How do you find? I know. For me, I've got a background in acting and theatre, and often that gratification comes from the applause at the end of the work. So it's kind of you can mark that, you can kind of tick that. Did everyone clap? Yeah, I must have done okay.
Yeah.
But for I guess for an artist, that can be very tricky to find.
I tell you what, I know what you mean, and I think I don't know whether it's a double whammy being a millennial, that I think you're just obsessed with that feedback, which has its ups and downs because you don't always get that feedback. So if I focus on the art, I can post an image that I spent that means a lot to me and I feel reflects a lot of things, and then doesn't get a lot of feedback, and I'm just like, oh dear, sad face. But I don't. I've tried to move past that quite a bit. It's still there. I'll go to my partner. I'll be like, ta-da, and my partner will go, oh yeah, well done. Okay, that's good. But I try and find the purpose in my work as being my motivator. I feel like I'm someone that's drawn to causes, and I'm drawn to feeling like I'm part of something, or I guess in that sense, I find value in the meaning of what I do more as an adult than maybe perhaps I would have been before. It's the same in my day job. In my day job, sometimes you'll have spent hours doing something, and then it's a complete black hole, and you won't get any feedback. I don't know whether that's helped me with my artistic confidence as well, because right now, like when I post, more often than not, when I post something, it's more like, there you go, rather than I wonder who likes it. And there's a lot, actually, I feel quite grateful because there's a lot of voices now online. Like I follow a lot of, I guess like arty motivational channels too, that always put forward, the same with like writing, they're always putting forward messages like, it's not about what other people like, it's about who you are, it's about what your voice is, it's about your perceptions, whether they're right or wrong. And that's another thing that I find has been it's still a challenge actually. Is like I will see something and feel something, and then I'll paint or I'll write something to that, and I might be wrong about the full picture, but I've made an effort to put my perspective across, and that's authentic. And then later on, I can grow from that. And if it's wrong, then I can add that into my new authentic voice in the next step. And I kind of like yeah, that's my approach at the moment. But I can't remember what your question is now.
That's okay. That was really insightful. I'm trying to get a grasp of, how would life feel for you if you was just a mother, or just or just the cyber intelligence analyst without the art? How would that feel?
Empty. No, it's the wrong word. No, I can't see. I don't think anybody is that black and white. I think most mums that I meet are a multitude of things, like as part of their identity. It's like cutting away part of your character. Well, the question you've asked me is really interesting, though. In order to think that way, how would I feel if I was just a woman? Like,
I don't mean that in any kind of derogative way. I take that the same as me as a father, me as a dad. Because we touched here at the very beginning. We went quite deep, didn't we, about how important it is to look after ourselves first for our children.
I can see where you're coming from. I don't think it's possible to reduce anybody that way. I think it's hard to. Okay, so a typical situation with me, like on maternity leave, I would start projects that have not been in my mind at all. So as soon as I have empty space, I'm itching to do something. And that's not because I don't find purpose in being a mum. I just have a very full character. And I think that most people do, if given the opportunity to grow, and if they're not twisted or limited by their external environments. I think most people want to do a lot of things. I do. So I don't know. Like I couldn't just be a mum, because I think the time of my life where I would have been a simpler person would have been when I was a very small girl, maybe like 7. Because that's the only time I can think of where I was like very, very light touch on subjects, and maybe not as attached or developed as a character. I just don't think I can think of who I would be if I was just a mum. If I was just a mum, I'd probably have like 3 projects on the go. I guess that's what I'm saying. I couldn't not do other things. But that's because I also like to work with my kids on separate projects. They've all got things going on as well. Like I've always got them painting or doing something, or yeah.
I guess going back to that being our best self, we need to find fulfillment in life, don't we? And if we going back to when we're young, when we're 7 or 8 years old, we're not kind of fulfilled yet. We're just our foundations, aren't we?
Yeah.
We're just about to discover who we are, and as we grow up, we get more and more fulfilled with things. And if art comes into your life, that can give you huge fulfillment, can't it?
Oh, I was really. I've always been interested in expressing myself artistically, but and I had some fantastic art teachers, like really good, and they supported me right from young. But I do remember being in art college for a very brief period of time, and this one guy, sort of, who I think it maybe was when we were being shown around, and he was just like, everybody should be given an opportunity to go to art college. And I remember, I always think about that sometimes, and I guess that's what I try and do with my kids, is just like, art is there to enjoy, but it's also the process. Like you've discussed this already a little bit, but it's the process in order to try and, like, I guess, navigate, think, reflect on whatever theme or topic or what's in front of you or the world, or even just, your day, or a colour. Like, there's a way of approaching problems that I do think everyone would benefit from an extra bit of creative confidence. And I think it's like, for example, this is again a bit far, it's kind of deep or like futuristic, but I think creativity and alignment with logical thinking is what pushes the boundaries in society as well. So I am, like, it's a personal journey for me. Art's a personal journey for me, but I also think it's a foundation for a lot of really important thinkers for the world, and I think it's important for pushing society forward. Do you know what I mean? Like the two sides of the brain.
It raises questions, like you say. So with your art, I think you said you're sometimes trying to find some answers or you're trying to put some kind of perspective on what you're looking at in the world right now. And you might not have the answers, and you might not have the full question, but it helps us think. It helps us become critical thinkers. This takes me to where the world seems to be going with education and taking the arts out of education, and they're in there. They're still in there, luckily, but and importantly, should I say? But they seem to be being taken out, and it seems to me it's my responsibility as a parent to show my kids the creative world, because it isn't there so much in education at the moment.
Yeah, it's always, they say, isn't it? It's always the first to go when UNCUTs are made. Yeah, like to bring it back to, I guess, to bring it into how I feel it's important as well, is within I guess increasingly tense times as well, and where we have, let's say, a sway towards populism or authoritarianism or anything like that. I think the arts almost, it can be one of two things, that they're the space in which, just if you have no money, it's the first to go. If the environment's really, really strict, it's also one of those places that likes to be, that systems like to oppress or limit as well. But it's often the place where the authentic voice for the oppressed can still maintain its existence. And I think like a lot of the bravery that I see, a lot of the shining lights, I guess metaphorically shining lights in amidst the darkness, is through the arts and through people expressing themselves. Yeah, that's also something I think.
I noticed a post. I discovered you through your social media, and I discovered you through a post where you said something along the lines of the world is making you feel quite heavy at the moment, and making it quite hard for you to produce your work. Tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, I go through ups and downs because it's obviously a lot of the things going on at the moment are quite traumatic. And I was even saying to my partner this morning, it was like, sometimes it's so hard not to be disillusioned with what's happening, because you have a value set. And I think that I have a lot of faith in people to have certain value sets, like, for example, kindness and empathy, and if not, like, reducing it to the family unit, like most people want to do the best by their children and the best by their family. But it's really hard not to be disillusioned when, I think, especially when you're bombarded with information, and the information is putting a slight angle on human nature, which is, I think, the biggest trauma of this last year is the justification of war crimes in, for example, like Gaza. It's the justification that I find disturbing, when people turn around and say, yes, but did you know that they did this? Did you know they did that? And I think it wouldn't matter who it was about, like whether or not it was a different group of people saying the same things. I think trying to get my head around why people would ever be able to justify some of the things that have happened to people over there, that's the most disturbing thing that I find. And then to sort of support, I guess, where I happen to have these great big, like, almost like despairing down periods. I think it doesn't help when we live in a world where you've got an overload of information that is also just infected. It's infected with misinformation, disinformation, and propaganda, and deliberate attempts to what I think is like to control narratives.
100%, and it not just to control narratives politically, but also for the system of the social media platforms themselves as businesses, that they exist based upon attention. And I think it may be within human nature to be drawn to dark and sad and troubled things. But I completely stay away from X because of how toxic I find it, and how I do post to there to try and, I'm trying to build an audience with the things that I'm doing. So I want to reach out into the world, but you see some of the things on there, and it's disturbing. But also at the same time, I've found myself absorbed in it and looking more at it and more and more. And I had to put limits on my phone. Yeah. I had to put screen time limits on there to protect myself because of how bad it was getting.
Yeah.
And there are things that are going on in the world that are, not everything's within our control.
Yeah.
Maybe we can have an influence in some way. Maybe, hopefully, we can have an influence or an impact. But when you see so much of it and you get absorbed into it through the social media platforms, it can be damaging to us as humans.
Yeah, and that's also, I think, like feelings of guilt and helplessness come in, and I try my best not to delve too much into the visuals of it, because that's something I've had to have a lot of discipline around anyway. So, and that's what sticks with me. I think probably because I'm an artist, I am quite visual. If I see something, when you're scrolling and you accidentally see something, and I'm finding purpose in my artwork through being a bit of an echo chamber of stories of bravery and hope, because I feel like in the middle of all these crises, which will come and go, and will come and go again, and will come and go, and each time there will be horrific. I think it's something that we can't ever truly escape. I think there's always going to be some of this darkness in the world. I think it's like I found a place in my artwork to at least try and find a narrative that is more of a shining light without shedding away or avoiding the topic in some ways, because I want it to be an authentic echo, if that makes sense. Not one that's like, okay, it's not because I don't want to be the sort of person that goes, I'm not going to look at what's going on because it's too horrific. It is, and I have to limit myself. But I'm not scared of seeing what you're going through. Like if it was like a message to, say, for example, like victims of war crimes, like it would be, I'm not shying away from you. I'm just trying to be that soft voice of hope in your environment, and rather than amplifying the trauma, because I think it's a more positive echo chamber.
Is there a danger of, if you bury your head in the sand, if you shy away from the world, if you say the darkness isn't there, that it is, it's all cozy where we are right now, it's all lovely and light, and we just pretend that's not happening? Is there a danger there?
I have a couple ways of thinking about this, because I've been used to this perspective quite a lot. My family don't watch politics or aren't interested or are not engaged. This is something that I grew up with. This is perspective of like, I'm not going to go there. Don't think too deeply, basically. Which I've always just been like, that's just who I am, so I can't avoid that. But I understood when I went into my degree. So I took psychology as an A-level, as well as art and a couple of things. But I was very interested in why people did bad things at a very young age. And when I took my degree in international relations, which kind of talks to politics and systems and various other things, I even in some debates and some discussions, I would always be like, you know what, I need to go back and look at this more because I don't understand it. And I'd always be confused. And I'd always, not always, but like I'd still have things I didn't know. And it was only when I was at uni that I realised that if I have a degree, if I'm getting a degree in the subject, and I'm still confused, how can I expect people who don't have a degree and who don't have vested interest in this to fully grasp the big picture? Human vulnerability being the way it is, and you know, you have this as a female guest, you have this small window until you have a family where you can sort of delve into these topics. I would say grasp the darkness with both hands and try and really break it apart so you can understand what's going on. You have this small window, and then you have a family, and you can't divest, you can't invest in all of that so much anymore. And my family didn't do any of that. Like you know, they went to school, they went to work, they had families. You know, generational. I guess, you know, we were the first to go to uni and whatnot. So I actually have a lot more empathy. It annoys me. Don't get me wrong, but it still annoys me. I have a lot more empathy for people who shy away from it. I think this is human nature. There's parts of human nature we're talking about here, and the human brain and the ability to grasp topics. I think the frustration probably is when you have a conversation with these people and you're grappling with a newspaper headline rather than like what they'll say to you as a newspaper headline, rather than a kind of like reflective, in-depth to and fro that you get that at uni, that you get that training to do that at uni. I guess when you do your academic work, you have to think critically about various topics. So again, like I have a lot more empathy, I think, than probably a lot of people about the idea of ignorance. And I guess that's probably because I find myself being ignorant. I think I'm quite ignorant of a lot of things, even though I am interested, and I try to.
It sounds more like less ignorant, more like you have more. You're finding more questions. You're finding that you're being open to the fact that you don't know everything, and that's quite a brave place to be. And that you're trying to discover things through your art.
Yeah. This is a little bit related to what we were discussing before, though, around truth and misinformation, disinformation, information bombardment as well. Is that I'm also very aware that it's really hard to understand exactly what's going on, and there's some instinct involved and common sense, but even that can be manipulated. A lot of my feelings about how my work might evolve artistically, I think, will tend more towards the abstract, I think, and symbolism. I think, like archetypes and symbolism, some of these aspects are universal and sort of speak to, I think, a couple of things like that we're talking about today, which is like human vulnerability and also human aspirations, and I kind of like, I feel like that's where my art will probably evolve to, you know, without really understanding where that would be. But
I wonder with you, because you also do this intelligence analyst work as well, that if that's affecting your work in some way, where you are very much a critical thinker, you're very open-minded, and you have a lot going on in your mind, you've got a lot of questions there. How is that affecting the work that you produce?
So, I mean, I've always been an artist in my outlet and my expression. And the intelligence, the analysis that I do, is kind of it's highly interconnected in some ways, because when I explained before, like from a young age, I was kind of interested in why people do bad things. I found it, you know, that was a disturbing idea to me from like a young age. I just didn't understand. I needed to understand. So my thoughts about the world, you know, when I got to thinking about my A-levels and what I wanted to do as a degree, and I was very aware of my own sort of like emotional vulnerabilities, and I'm a very passionate person. When you're a really passionate person, it's really easy to go down a rabbit hole as well and then be completely wrong. The work that I do is a result of those early thoughts, those early analytical thoughts, and those early analytical thoughts where I wanted to, I think, so I don't want to get too academic with you, but I had a great psychology teacher when I was doing my psychology A-level, and there were some stories there about responsibility, for example, that really impacted my thoughts around why why good people could do bad things, for example. And there was a particular psychologist called Zimbardo, and he has a really, really interesting book. If you've ever read it, it's quite heavy going. It's called The Lucifer Effect, and it talks about various studies about how humans can be coerced or as part of conformity or various other bits, your external environment. And this early work actually introduced me to issues, for example, around torture in prison environments like Abu Ghraib, and also how, for example, like normal members of society, like in Nazi Germany and other authoritarian systems, how everyday people could get wrapped up in what's going on. And it answered a lot of questions for me, but it also told me that systems play a large part and your external environment play a large part in impacting how you behave. And so I was really interested in answering those questions, and in some ways I was quite idealistic, unnervingly idealistic, and I had to get over that quite quick. Like, basically I went into my uni degree thinking that there were just problems that people hadn't solved yet, and that's just entirely not true. That lots of people put their minds to these problems.
What is the truth then to that question then?
Why people do bad things?
No, you came out, you had this moment of, that everything could kind of be fixed. What was the discovery? What was the moment of you going, well, actually, maybe it can't be fixed. Maybe there are bad things in the world.
No, well, it's not that it can't be fixed. It was more, I'll add some context to what I just said, because I didn't tell you the story, but there's this like fantastic study in psychology about the talks to responsibility, and it's called the Kitty Genovese case. And in this case, it's middle class. I think this girl is like a relatively middle class area. She goes out, comes home, but she gets attacked by a person, a guy. And this is all like from memory, so I apologise if it's not exactly correct. Basically, she comes back, it's late at night, she gets attacked. People hear her, and this guy runs away. I think somebody opens the door and shouts, and the guy that goes away, but he comes back two more times. And like, whether she's severely injured or killed, I can't remember. But there was 36 witnesses to this situation, and it was a fairly well-to-do area. And I think what ended up happening was somebody who was on the phone, someone advised them to call the ambulance, the police and whatnot. And so I guess what the messaging behind this case study was, and what they were investigating, was how on earth was this young girl attacked 3 times in a fairly well-off area by the same guy when there were so many people who knew. And the theories behind it is that the more people that know a topic or know about something, the less likely you are to take responsibility, because you assume, the assumptions are, is that someone else is going to do something. Someone else has probably already called the police, or someone else is probably better at handling this situation. And there are other scenarios that are similar to this, which are, I think it's like a guy lying on the street who was like, I think he had a heart attack or was drunken or something. I think he had a health problem, but it was in a crowded street, and most people just thought he was lying on the street drunk. And so, and then the idea there is that like probably somebody thought that because so many people were walking past, that somebody had already.
I've been in that situation. You're taking me back to. I was in London a few weeks back, and there was a man laying on the floor on Oxford Street in the middle of the street, and everyone was just stepping over it. And I was like, he's in the middle of the street, guys. Like, no one was paying attention, and he needed medical help. And so, sometimes it is crazy the collective consciousness that comes about, and I think we need to be aware of it, don't we? We need to take personal responsibility.
That's it. Well. Yeah. That's 100%. That's it. And I think that the phrase is diffusion of responsibility. So the more people, the higher level of diffusion there is, and these things aren't like escapable, I don't think, to the degree that you can be like snap a finger and get everyone to just forget that this happens. I think personal responsibility is massive, and the problem I had when I first heard this, I was just like, "Whoa, this just means even though everybody knows there's global poverty, somebody is looking at it, and there's voila." Mm-hmm. I don't know whether that's a god complex or like complete naivety. Like, I went into uni thinking somebody just needs to look at it. That's it. Everyone knows about it. It's not doing anything. It's not true. There are lots of people over the world that are highly interested in these topics, but the diffusion of responsibility and the counter to that, I think, is just, for me, it was a huge awakening. And Zimbardo, the psychologist, the book was really inspiring to me, and it talked to issues like this, and also there's the sort of levels of grooming, for example. Like, I think this is in trying to get people influence and trying to get people to do what you want to do. And he talks to this like step in the door technique, and I think this talks to the electric shock experiments, maybe.
Go back to step in the door technique. Tell me a bit more about that.
Well, yeah. So this talks to the same issue. So in the electric shock experiments, and I'm struggling to remember the psychologist's name, but I want to say
it's not a test.
Milgram or something like that. But in this study, what they did was they brought ordinary people in, and they had somebody behind a, for example, I'm just going to give it like an average example. It would be someone behind a glass door, say like you, and say I was the normal person, unlikely, but say I'm a normal person, and you are part of the experiment. You know what's going on, and so I have like a doctor in a doctor's uniform. This is important. Or like the experimenter in a doctor's uniform, and then he would go, right, what you need to do is ask him a question. So if I say to you like 2 + 2, and then if he gets the answer wrong, you need to give him an electric shock. Okay, so long story short, like there was the average person. This is like 80% of people in the right situation would give you an electric shock to the degree that it might kill you. Mm. And the things that, so the foot in the door technique are things like talking to gradual exposure. So like if you start off low, they're more likely to kind of keep going. And uniforms. If the person who was telling me to electrocute you was not wearing a uniform and it was just one of them, I'd be like, I'm not doing that. But the average person, if they're wearing a uniform, will do higher levels of voltage. And if there's two of them, like, the percentages of people that kill you go up. Mm-hmm.
There was something similar with this, wasn't there, where they did a prison scenario, and they got 20 people together, and they just said, this 10, you're the guards, you're the inmates, and they saw how the community changed just from giving them titles.
Yeah, and exactly, this is the same. So Zimbardo was the psychologist behind the Stanford prison experiment. Mm-hmm. So personal responsibility comes into all of these things, and you'll find unique stories in the prison environment of how particular individuals got around not committing crimes, or like, if you say crimes in quotation marks, but acts of like sexual misconduct and other things that happened during that experiment, I think. But for the example of the electric shock as well, there was like 12% of people who didn't do it, and I hold on to that. Like, I hold on to
What do you think was different about them 12%? What do you think made them different to the others?
I think this has got a lot to do with healthy, independent, critical thought and personal responsibility. And so the difficulty, though, is when you get to an awakening of this and you realise it's what you see and what you think is okay, and it's actually down to you in your own navigation of your own life to be aware of what's right and wrong. The difficulty of that personal responsibility is it can go completely the other way, and that's kind of what happened with me at uni. Is I took on far too much personal responsibility for things that were beyond my control, and it made me like an emotional roller coaster in some ways, and it affected my critical thinking. So I had this like idea that I needed, as soon as I saw something wrong, then if I didn't do it, I didn't know if someone was, but that in itself is also quite naive and not always going to be the case. I think there's I guess I'm still navigating this as an issue and how to navigate things that I find right and wrong. But you'll talk to any of my family and friends, I was a bit of a nightmare for taking responsibility far too much and getting involved too left feet forward, as they say, like all the time, getting myself in trouble. I that's generally how I was. And again, like probably becoming a mum has impacted the way that I think about some of these things. Actually, this has been one of the things that I've had to take stock of. Is I think taking too much responsibility can lead you into environments where it's a little bit risky or a little bit like hugely, and self-sabotaging is part of that. It's like, actually, you have to be a bit more considerate of yourself, and you have to be a bit more considerate of your environment and not be too stupid, because otherwise your children are going to be without a mum. And I'm all for like, I personally like if I had strings attached.
I really feel like you're talking to me now, like so directly. So this conversation is massively important to me. We're talking about like being a parent and taking that personal responsibility, and I come up with these ideas sometimes, right? I come up with these all my life. I've just an idea will spark, and I'll do something with them. And it has, since I've been doing the podcast, I'm always having these ideas, and I've been making these ideas work as well. Until recently, I tried something. I tried putting myself in a new environment that turned out to be quite dangerous. Actually, I had this idea that I would seek creatives on the internet. So I've done creatives in the wild, where I go out onto the street and I talk to people, performers on the street performers, and just meet people out in the world, and that seemed to be okay. But creatives on the internet and just going into chat rooms and just going in, yeah, your face said it all. That was so naive. And I put myself on places on they've got these open forums on X that you can enter, and it was just a bad dark rabbit hole very, very quickly. And I had to sit back and go, whoa, protect the environment, Martin. Like, this is not a safe space. This is not a space where you can you can't make an impact in it. There's something being fueled there that's dark and nasty.
Yeah.
And, it's not my job to fight those monsters.
No, that's it. I do think this is new for me, though, that idea is that you can find your role and your space and light the candles in the areas of darkness that you can sustain. Sustainability has been a big thing, I think. It's like, I don't want to just come in blaring and try and solve problems that then like 2 weeks later I find myself not being able to because I'm burnt out or whatever. But this is still something, that experience that you've just talked about, that I'm still trying to find my feet in, because I care. It's hard not to care about a lot of things.
Your care drives you. It drives your work, but it's driving it in the right direction.
Yeah.
I guess is the important thing that we discover here. What's the right place to go with that passion?
Yeah.
So tell me, let's go back. We touched on it a little bit with how because I feel this is something that's really important. I feel like your work and the work of other artists, at times when the world is dark, when the world is hard, that's when art should be being produced for ourselves and the world.
Yeah.
And so it really touched me when I saw your message on social media that you said, it's just hard right now.
Yeah.
How have you come out of that? Have you managed to come out of that space at all and find yourself working again? And work's a funny term to use for this. Creating.
Yeah, it is. I know, because I love it.
Yeah. But you know the value, don't you? I kind of feel like just having this conversation here now for 40 odd minutes, I feel like you know the value in your work and the importance of it. And so why would we allow that to slip away at this important time?
I wanted to express how the despair over like the human tragedy was affecting me, because I also feel like other people might not be willing to express that for themselves too.
Mm-hmm.
I think it's part of being an authentic artist is moving with your emotion, and I am not using my voice fully yet. I think that expressing the down days are as important as expressing the highs, to be authentic. And I know I won't be the only one. I know that there'll be people out there that are equally being affected by what's going on. One of the things that troubles me about today, and I think maybe I can't say whether it's because I'm a mom or if it's because it's entirely new to maybe my generation. I don't know. But I find myself increasingly not talking about certain things. I think I'm highly sensitive, so maybe that's why I feel this encroachment of the limiting of language and the limiting of expression when it comes to, for example, Israeli state-sponsored actions in the Gaza Strip and elsewhere. I think when we talk about human tragedy, it's the narratives that are being pushed up, and I see it happen to other people all the time, where someone will express solidarity with civilian loss of life, as in like how sad it is, and there will be this barrage of I want to say maybe paid or maybe not, but people who come in and immediately accuse these people of being terrorists or anti-Semitic, and I see that happening on LinkedIn too, and that's been disturbing as well. I feel like there's a phrase, isn't there? It's like, whoever you fear criticizing is who's like got power over you. There's a phrase around it, and I guess what I was trying to express in that video was the emotional pressure of having to contend in like the most recorded era of human history with something that we grew up knowing was wrong by our own value systems, Western systems. That is happening, and then also watching people not be able to express their horror for fear of being labelled anti-Semitic or labelled as a terrorist. I've also I know I said this to you already, but my early work was in my Instagram thing was around the women life freedom movement. And this was highly inspiring for me. Like, I really was moved by the women in Iran. The dancing, the hair being let loose, and absolutely just horrified at how these young people were treated and what's happened to them since. And then what I feel is like almost like a double whammy is what's happening is a lot of the, let's say, accounts that inspired me in that movement, or I followed, or people that I maybe been inspired by, have had trouble, I would say, supporting the people in Gaza, because they are on like heavily, a lot of the network that I'm part of is like, seems to be heavily pro-Israeli, which in the context of what's happening right now, highly unempathetic towards loss of life in the Gaza Strip and elsewhere. And that has been really confusing for me, how the victims of oppression on one side aren't relating to the victims of oppression on another space. And this talks to my where I feel like I didn't grasp the big picture initially, and what we have going on there, and I'm still probably grasping the big picture, am I incorrect? Is the enemy of my enemy is my friend. So the Iranian regime, being as oppressive as it is, and being a certain way, certain makeup, it needs, wants to be, the population that are being oppressed don't want that regime in place, but that regime is also in conflict with Israel. So actually, the Iranian population is better placed befriending Israel, because Israel's the one that supports regime change in Iran, if that makes sense.
Mm-hmm.
And so I guess what I'm saying here is, like, big picture is, it's hard not to go, how can I be an echo chamber for these people, which I still am, and these people don't want me to be an echo chamber for, and I say echo chamber because I'm echoing the bravery in amongst the darkness, is how I feel, for the people that are suffering in Gaza. That doesn't compute to me. I get it on a political level, but I don't get it from a humanitarian perspective. All this confusion, I think the confusion over fear of being able to talk, fear of being able to express yourself, and fear of alignment, and all these other things. I think it's important to express my own doubts, and express my own confusion, and express my own struggle, because I feel like when you do, it's true, and so then other people might feel like, oh, I thought I was the only one that was confused by that, or I was the only one that was being impacted by this, or you walk down the street, everyone seems happy. Is there something wrong with me when I suddenly think that the world has gone crazy? It's just like, no, there's nothing wrong with you. There's a lot of things going on right now that is in contrast to how I feel like, as a typical, I think, Western student, you've been brought up on liberal values, and you've been brought up on human rights, and you've been brought up on the idea of the United Nations and international human law, and there's a set of values there that we believe in, and it doesn't matter what group you're part of, it's supporting those values. And so, yeah, it's all horrific. And I think,
so in a world full of confusion, madness, darkness, it's important that we share our personal truth, is what you're saying. That what you do know to be true about you personally, that can shine a light on the good things in life, and it can bring us all together.
Yeah. And I mean, some of the things I can think of that have, like, in the past, that have been like in the middle of the madness are that I don't know if you know, but there was during the 2014 Crimea, when Russia took over Crimea, and there was the Euromaidan protests, and there was the kind of clashes there. That there was a pianist, there was a piano with the Ukrainian flag painted on the side, and there was a pianist. There was not just the same one pianist, but it was like the terrorist pianist. He would wear a balaclava and go in paint, and in the middle of all this like crazy gunshot fire and just like this music playing, I was just like, that is phenomenal. And I also remember that in the same documentary that I spoke to this pianist, there was I think it was a hospital, makeshift hospital in a house, and there was a couple dancing in the middle of all of this tragedy. And it's the same thing, like you go kind of some of the Iranian music that came out during the Women Life Freedom protests, and it's I'm not going to say it right, it's like Bayar or something like that. So it's a fantastic song saying like expressing everything that they were trying to fight for. And so it's like music, dance, and artwork, and all the things that come out despite what's going on. And I think it's those stories that speak to hope and resilience, and doesn't matter what happens, you're not going to take my soul away from the situation. It's really inspiring. I love that.
And powerful. There's so much power in everything you're saying, Sarah. And there's so much power in your work. And I want to move on to a little bit of the spiritual side of your work as well before we wrap this up, because there is a spiritual element to this. I see there's a lot of angel messaging in there. Tell me a little bit about the influence of that and where that comes from.
So, I wouldn't say I was religious. I've not really been a fan of like organized religion, for a lot of reasons, but I am a fan of lots of values that come out of religious groups and spiritual groups, and I'm not afraid to sort of, say that I've taken inspiration from lots of different places in order to try and be the best person that I am. Like, I'm not against religious people, I just don't like organized religion. I think it leads to other things I don't like. So I am a big fan of the old Renaissance masters, like I am, and I love the big paintings of I guess some of the early Renaissance work was very Christian, or was very, well, I say Christian, but it was very religious. So lots of the work was around the stories and myths and other things like that. So, but I just find it really impactful. So one of my recent visits to, I think it's like the Russell Coates Museum. We've got Russell Coates Museum, it's like a really interesting family that travelled around the world and brought back all this, like a Victorian family. They brought back all this stuff, and they have like gallery there, and they have a lot of work there. And I love this painting that they've got, and there's these group of like angels with trumpets with the angels with the pink wings. I love the pink wings, and I think so. I know you mentioned spiritual, but I think there's something else connected to this, and I attach archetypal thinking, or mythological thinking, more to this than necessarily like religious. Although I would say, like, as a person, I border on a spiritual rather than a religious. In the divine choice, the reason why I've got angels in there and I've got demons in there is because I really needed to articulate the struggle between right and wrong that I feel like is happening at the moment when it comes to talking about Gaza. And I think when you sit yourself in the lofty values of like justice and kindness and empathy and all the things that are important to me, and love and whatnot, it's really easy to see that what's going on is wrong. So it's more symbolism, and there was a song as well recently that really helped me define this painting, which was, I don't know if you heard Ren, High Ren?
Yes, yeah.
High Ren, and he talks about the mental health aspects that he's been going through, and he, right at the end of the song, he sort of gets up and he has this kind of like monologue around when he was younger. He declared that he was going to fight evil, and that after that he suffered from all of these consequences, and he spoke about this pendulum, like, and that we're not angels and we're not demons, we're humans. We mustn't forget that we're humans. And that's why I've got the man in the middle, because I feel like it's man's struggle. And he's also got, I don't know if you noticed, but he's pointing up and he's pointing down, like pointing up, pointing down. There's a bit of hermetic messaging in there, like what's above is below, what's outside is within. And I wanted to almost, what I'm trying to say with that piece is the struggle, but also that let's inspire ourselves to do better. And that's what humans should do, that we should always try and be better.
Strive to be better, strive to do more.
And those are goals. I think those are always lofty spirit, more aligned with spiritual goals. Like constantly working with yourself and trying to choose the right over the bad and whatever. But this is where I think my work will probably evolve more to. I'm just working on my technique at the moment, because my technique, despite having done art all my life, YouTube's great and Instagram's great, because people show you things, I'm like, oh my god, how do I not know this? Like, how to do that? So one of the things I'm experimenting recently, well, I'm constantly experimenting, but is using acrylic for oil paints. I used acrylic for a long time, and then oils are a lot more forgiving, and so which is one of the techniques. So the symbolism, the mythological symbolism, and some of the archetypal stories that come from the myths, that talk to the human journey, I think will probably be a large part of what I do moving forward. It's just sort of trying to get there, but I'm always trying to get there. But yeah, I don't know if that.
But through that experimentation of the new techniques, I'm sure you'll find your way, and I really look forward to seeing what artwork comes from you in the future, having seen what you've done so far. And this, you have a really important message, which I hope you keep championing, and you keep being that echo for the ones in need. And it's really wonderful to see what you're doing with your work, and you're highlighting the value of art, if nothing else. So thank you, Sara. Thank you for this conversation today. I really do appreciate you sharing. One last question for you then that's come to me. If there is another artist out there that is struggling to say find their voice within their work, what advice would you give them to start?
Two things. One of them is gravitate to what you care about, and don't worry about what other people think. Just do what you care. Just work on what you care about, as in like themes and topics and whatnot. And then the number two is just practice, and experiment. I say those two things are really, really important, because I think like everyone always says like, how do I find my authentic or my style? How do I find my style? And I think you need to do both of those things. People will say just do it, just do what just paint. Actually, I think you need to experiment with different styles. And then the other one is to find out what you care about in your work. Like, do you care about perspective, angles? Do you care about themes, stories? For me, it's like human narratives, but like, what is it you care about? So really concentrate on finding those things and digging into that without worrying about other people, or whether you don't care about whether people's pretentious or whether it's wrong or anything like that. That's, I think, how you follow your voice, and I think that's how you follow your style, if that makes sense.
It does. Wonderful. Well, thank you so much, Sara. And if anyone has been watching or listening to this conversation, where do they find you in your work?
So I'm on Instagram as Citizen Arts. That's citizen.arts, and I've also got a website, citizenarts.co.uk. Yeah, always feel free to DM me on Citizen Arts. You'll find my name there as well, Sara Moore. Yeah.
Wonderful. Well, thanks again. And if anyone was watching or listening, thank you for joining us for this conversation.
Thanks, Mark.
Thank you. Thank you. Bye-bye.